Drink it in, man.
Deep left side carry on. Picks on the block. At the 5. At the 2. At the 1 to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Drink it in, man.
Get up, Stafford throws. It is end zone. Caught! Oh, baby, what a catch! Kenny Galladay, you're a freak! What a catch! Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Cornbread! I love the Lions! Say it with me! I love the Lions!
Drink it in, man.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is,
Thank you for calling. Please listen to your list of 46 possible service options.
which is why when you choose USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable. 24/7 online service for claims, access to roadside assistance, and more. All at the touch of a button. Start getting the service you deserve. Get a quote today. Ability to receive a quote depends on membership eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliate, San Antonio, Texas.
Two guys drove to work. Neither guy wore a seatbelt. One guy got a ticket. One guy didn't. The same two guys drove home. One guy wore his seatbelt. One guy didn't. One guy made it home. The guy not wearing his seatbelt didn't. Don't risk it. Click it or ticket. Paid for by NHTSA.
Detroit Koolaid, what is going on, everybody? We are back, and we're not only back, it's free agency. It's officially opened. We couldn't have got a bigger start, Grifka. Before I introduce you, then on Monday, the Lions came out swinging. They're signing people left and right. They're getting big names. They're getting people. And Grifka, are you aware that you can pre-buy tickets to the Lions-Browns Super Bowl? Are you aware of this, buddy?
At what casino do you get those in Las Vegas?
Man, they're going to be readily available because both our Lions and the Cleveland Browns of all teams are making some big noise in free agency. So, Grifka, we're just going to get right into it, man. We're going to talk football. We know that people want to hear our opinions. They want to listen to some Lions talk, and that's what we give them every week here on the Detroit Koolaid Cast. So, Grifka, we come out swinging. Let's break it all down. The first signing, I barely got into work on Monday morning. The Lions had signed Danny Amendola. He got cut from the Dolphins. This is a former Patriot. This is a pure slot receiver. Paid him a decent chunk of money. But what did you think about this signing when you heard it? And what are your overall thoughts?
I thought it was a decent signing. 1 year. I'm glad that we didn't sink a whole lot of years into Danny Amendola. He's kind of been known to be an injury bug, but I think he's a guy. I know after you texted me that, I was kind of ho-hum about it, and I'd rather give Powell a chance. But if he's a guy that can teach Powell, how to, be the effective slot receiver that Danny Amendola was, if he's there to kind of help him along, his 1 year that he's there, it's a great signing. The money they gave him, was at the $4.5 million. It's not, it's not that terrible, So it's a nice signing that the guy's come from a winning background. He knows what it takes to win. He was stuck on a Dolphins team that I'm sorry they just don't have that great at quarterback, so he really couldn't do a lot down there. But him they weren't that great. But it's a good signing. 1 year deal. Yeah, I look back at it now. It's I'm happy with it.
Yeah, man. The only thing, me, I'm always looking at, I want the guys right in the prime, 25, 28 years old, more so in that 25, 26 range, as kind of the sweet spot. So when you see 33 years old, kind of nicked up throughout his career, even though he was pretty healthy last year, those are things that were kind of on the negative. But the biggest thing too is when you balk at that kind of money, and then you see this other money that we're going to talk about later flying all around the NFL. 4.5 for a guy that knows his role, loves the coach, overall, I've heard always great things about how he's a hard worker, just a grimy kind of come to work type of guy when it comes to football. And like I say, a pure slot. Like, we didn't go get another outside receiver. We didn't go get a guy that, maybe he can make a leap forward as a slot. Like, this guy has pretty much always played there. He's played there at a decently high level at times. And like I say, I think that culture stuff is just so big. So looking at like these guys making 10, 11 million, some of these receivers, I mean, even Golden Tate, like, remember last year we were talking about giving Golden Tate a 2-3 year deal for 10 million per. I mean, I'll definitely take Danny Amendola for 1 year, 4.5 with some incentives as well. So I'm really on board with this signing. I just hope that he said he's in the best shape of his life. He said he's faster than ever. Like, I really hope he lives up to that, because if you can have Marvin, Kenny, and a guy like this, along with Powell sitting there, in case of injury, and then you go out and draft someone, I really like that receiving core. And if they were to trade Marvin, which I'm not a proponent of, I still think you can move some pieces around, and if you did deal him, you'd add something nice. So I think this is going to be a good receiving core, barring health, but also like something to look forward to in 2019.
Yeah, like I said, I think the biggest thing is with him is that his experience. He knows what it takes to win, and like I said, it's a 1 year deal. I think he knows where he's at in his career, and if he can like maybe teach, like I said, Powell, show him like, hey, this is how to run the routes. This is what you're looking for underneath. I realize wide receiver coaches are supposed to do that, but a guy, if he's going to show you how to do that, and a guy that's done it for years and years in this league, it can only better the team, especially in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point too. I thought he could be a great 1 year mentor. He could be a real culture guy of just after he's gone, people will be like, oh man, Amendola came in here and busted his tail, never complained, supported the coach. Like, everybody's kind of fall in line from there, I think. And Griff, I give you credit, man. We're 1 for 1 and you're semi-positive. So I thought for sure you're great about, but so far so good. I mean,
yeah, we signed a lot of people, so.
Yeah, exactly. I'll beat you up. We'll be arguing. Through this was one that unless you're really diving into some of these free agents across the board. I don't know, I heard many people talking about Justin Coleman when they announced it, and they started breaking him down. Hey, he's a great nickel corner. He's coming from Seattle. He used to play in New England. He's got some ties there. And I mean, nothing too major, but he did have some ties. He's young. He had some really good athletic scores when I looked him up in regards to some of his combine numbers and Spidergram and some different things. So the more I read up on him, man, I was like, hey, this is a nice signing, because we've been talking for weeks and weeks the whole last season about Tease and Nevin not getting it done. So not only do we get rid of Nevin, but we replace him with a guy like this that has some upside, that has some good ratings, plays the nickel pretty much exclusively. And then I saw the contract. $9 million per, man. Woo. It is backloaded, but man, that's a lot of money for that type of position. We always talk about position premiums. I know the NFL is going more to a slot corner being a premium, but you've heard me before, defensive end, corner, quarterback, an edge rusher, that type of stuff. Those are kind of things that I pay the big bucks to. But man, they shelled it out for this nickel corner. He's got to be better than what we had, but like I say, hopefully he can somewhat live up to that dollar amount. What do you think about Justin Coleman coming in here, Grifka? Hopefully really adding to an area that was a huge weakness in 2018.
Yeah, that's I guess I'll try to be semi-positive for you. When I read it and I first started to read it, one of the positives that really came out on him, as they said late in the year, is that he really became the quarterback of that defensive backfield. Even though he was like the nickel, he was like the nickel corner. He was kind of the leader back there. Richard Sherman was gone, Earl Thomas was out, and he was the guy that came in and really kind of started leading the way, is what I was reading on him. So that made me feel better about it. Once again, I mean, it's the nickel. It still made me wonder who they're going to put on the outside. I hope this isn't one of those things that's just like, well, yeah, he was a cornerback and he was really good at nickel. We're just going to start him opposite Darius Slay. And, yeah, he's played with Matt Pat before, so maybe Matt Pat knows the skills better than what we do. But it was one of those things I was just, a little leery about. It's like, that's a lot of money for some guy that plays nickel corner. And I realize now the game is there's a lot of wide receivers out on the field. It's more spread out. And like we were talking before, nickel corners aren't necessarily, fast straight line guys. They got to be really quick, and they're going to have some speed, but they have to cover a lot more area than your general cornerback does. So this is just one of those things where it's just, like you said, it's more backloaded, which helps us, which helps the Lions right now because it still gives them money to go sign other people, but. This one, call me in 3 years and I'll let you know if it's a good signing or not. I did that for you.
Yeah, you did that because you're going to hedge your bets and be somewhat negative, but also hopeful. And then if he's good, you'll be like, oh man, what a great thing to go out and get Justin Coleman. And then if he sucks, you'll rag on him like you've done before. But hey, man, like I say, the more research I did, I mean, this was kind of the biggest need on the team. Everybody talks about pass rusher. I can't count how many times we complained about not being able to cover anybody in that slot position or just in general at our number 2 corner area. So Justin Coleman's not a guy that will move outside and play number 2 corner, but I'm just saying that position was so bad. It was just a glaring need, a glaring issue that, they went out and directly addressed it. So, other than the dollars and cents, I can't be very negative because, they went out and they looked at the team and said, okay, one of the major reasons we lost football games last year was because we could not cover both in the slot and opposite of Darius Slay. So they went out and solved that problem. And, here we are on Wednesday, and they're still sort of looking, what are they going to do at number 2 corner? I'm assuming it's going to be a vet and a rookie, kind of let them battle it out and see who can do it. But if they upgrade that position, I mean, with our safeties and our new blood back there, it's going to be much better in coverage than we have been. So I think it's going to be big improvement. Grifka will be super positive on this in about 6 months to a year. You'll love it, no doubt. So next thing that came across the wire, Grifka, I mean, this was the big one. This was the one everybody been talking about, everybody been waiting for. Trey Flowers, man, the absolute beast defensive end. This guy, Grifka, checks all the boxes. He's like 25, 26 years old. You watch him on film. He's just big, bulky. He can play the run. He can get pressures. He doesn't have these major sack numbers, but every time you watch him in his highlights or just in general, he's making plays. He's hustling. I just think he's a great guy for the program. He's just an absolute physical football player. When you look at him, I mean, he's thick. He's got big arms. He's got the long arms. He's got the general measurables that you look for. And we always talk about, when we sign people, we want them to be like football players. We want them to be just that gritty, that absolute kind of a guy that you think is just going to be meat and potatoes. And I think, yeah, he got paid top dollar like these rushers that get 20, 15 plus sacks. But I think we're going to be very proud, very happy with this guy for years to come. It's going to be hard to live up to that number, but that's the number in the NFL now, man. You're not getting bargains at defensive end for $8 million or something that end up working out. As long as he's solid, not hurt very often, and comes in here and is a culture guy and just a guy that can do multiple things, move him all around. I mean, I absolutely love it. I know a few weeks ago we talked about we were leaning against him because I tried to sell everybody on the Landon Collins, but like I say, did a little more research and just thought this guy's probably the perfect guy for Matt Pat. So I absolutely love it. Huge price tag. What's your thoughts on Trey Flowers coming to the D?
When I first number, because I know here we go, get the bell. I know we talked about this last show or a couple shows ago. What would I spend on a defensive end? And I was like, because you were like, 17, 18 mil, and I was like, 14, 15 is what I would look to spend. And then I know when we were pinging back and forth on this. I was like, gosh, that price, yikes. And then I was just like, but then, I'm starting to read things. I know where he's coming from. I know what he's been. The one thing, like you said, you brought it up on the show about the red flag, the shoulder surgery. You had brought that up, so that was kind of sticking in the back of my mind as well. But then, I'm reading things. I'm actually watching things, watching NFL Network, and after the signing, or the announcing of the signing, they had people on there, and one of the people on there was actually like, this may be less than he went for less than what they thought he would get. So I'm like, wow, really? But like you said, that's what it's going for. And people at NFL Network, this is all they deal with. They thought he might even get more than what he actually got. So I was like, okay. If some people even think we got a slight bargain on it, I can live with that. But you're right. This is exactly what they needed. What he did last year. And once again, there's always those Debbie Downers out there. I was reading that stuff too. He knew it was a contract year, so we worked harder and blah blah blah. And I read that stuff too. But I don't think he's that way. I think he's a guy that plays with a chip on his shoulder. He knows. He knows what he has to do. And him coming to this team, going, signing up with a guy that used to coach him. He knows what he's about. It's almost kind of like, I know you. I'm expecting this of you, and he knows that. And so he's like, he could have went to how many teams? I'm sure other teams might have been offering the same thing, but he came here to Detroit to play with Matt Pat. The guy fits fits perfectly on the defense that he wants. He's going to be a leader down there. I mean, him and Snacks down there on the defensive line. Those guys teaching Sean Hand, Sean how to be pros, how to play the game, stuff like that. In the long run, I think it helps Okwara as well. I think they're going to have to pay this guy some mind. And Okwara, I think it could only help his game. So I love this signing. I really do.
Yeah, I like what you hit on right at the end too, because if you think back to not even a calendar year ago, Grifka, we had Ricky Jean, we had Sean, and we had really nothing else that we knew about. Now, just a little over 6 months, a year later, a season later, we've got Deshaun Hand, we've got Sean, we've got Trey Flowers. I mean, we've got Snacks in the middle. We've got Okwara, who was a pickup off the scrap heap at 23 years old that we were able to keep for another couple of years. It looks like he's got some really good rush and some upside. I mean, look at that defensive line. To me, that's a better line than when we used to pay high resources every year in the draft and in other areas trying to beef up DTs, trying to go like get this dominant defensive line. Like, I think that's absolutely nasty and versatile up front. I mean, Deshaun Hand, you can move all around. Sean, you can move a little bit. Like Flowers, you can move all over the place. Like I saw Okwara kind of flip sides and do some different things next year. Like, not only are they good and young for the most part, but they're versatile too. And I think that's going to be huge for 2019.
Yeah, especially I was thinking about this after the signing, and they signed Okwara, they got this, thinking about who's on this line, and I'm starting to think about like this pass rush, what they're going to do. This guy can get to the quarterback. Snacks can push the middle when he's in there. He's not a pass rusher. He's not like a Warren Sapp, that you would expect to get to the quarterback, but he clogs up the middle, allowing, Deshaun Hand, Ashawn Robinson, those guys, Okwara off the edge, Flowers off the end. Look at the offensive lines that Detroit goes against in this division. We always kind of nitpick about stuff. I mean, Minnesota's offensive line was only okay, and I know they've made a couple signings to look to improve it. Same with Green Bay, but that's been Green Bay's knock the last couple of years. Their offensive line hasn't been that good. Now, Chicago's line, I mean, I will admit, I believe Chicago's offensive line is probably the best in the division, but Detroit's putting a defensive line out there that can compete with these guys, that, is on par with these guys. So the signings where they're at, who we got, it's a definite upgrade. It's definitely going to help this team in this division.
Yeah, I like your point about the division. My thing too is that, like, even when we had a decent defensive line in the past, I've always felt for the last 5 plus, maybe even more than that, 5 to 8 years, we never spent any resources on decent safeties or corners. It was always like guys off the street, low draft picks. nothing. Now, like, we've not only spent some money, but we spent some draft resources on DBs and safeties. So not only can we rush, but I'm thinking we'll be able to cover much better in 2019, especially with like the growth we've seen from Diggs. Like, I feel like Diggs and that front line is going to lead this defense, you know, both like verbally and physically and just with their play. You know, they're going to be solid across the front, and they've got a leader in the back end that just seems to be no nonsense and all about, you know, running and hitting and covering when he has to. So I think that's going to make a huge difference. I'm super excited to see it. But hey, man, Trey Flowers, welcome to the D. Happy to have you. We know you're pricey, but I think you'll live up to it, no doubt about it. So let's keep moving through these a little bit, Grifka. Soon after Trey Flowers, I mean, again, we're still on Monday morning, man, Monday afternoon here. Jesse James gets signed, a guy that's really young, still 24, I believe. You know, is with Pittsburgh. I remember when he was coming out in the draft, you know, everybody was kind of intrigued by this guy coming out of Penn State that, you know, in college was pretty good as far as catching, blocking, all types, kind of a versatile tight end. Kind of fell in the draft. I want to say he went in the 5th round. Kind of with Pittsburgh, where they were splitting carries with a couple different tight ends there. You know, never really used them a ton, but when they did, you know, they always seemed to be good. Like kind of the Pittsburgh tight ends, the Heath Millers, were never going to put up stats or do much, but when they make plays, you know, they were always pretty solid. I don't mind this signing. Like I love the youth. I love his size, 6'7". You know, got some decent bulk. I've read some things that he's a pretty good blocker, which is always a nice bonus. I saw some tape on him. He didn't really seem very athletic or fluid after he caught the football. But, man, Jesse James, I don't mind it. Now, before I throw it to you, it was probably a day later when I was asking people, like, anybody see the numbers on this guy? Because I was hearing like 6 million per, and I know I was talking with the Big Hughes, and I was like, 6 million per for Jesse James? That seems like a lot. And he's like, oh, no, it's probably like, you know, in the 3 to 4 range, something like that. I was like, I'm hearing 6. And then it came out where it was like a little over 6, you know, with some backload. So, you know, I think that's a lot. Maybe it's the running rate in the NFL, but he's going to have to make plays in the pass game and be kind of an integral part to live up to that kind of dollar amount. But like you say, seem to be one of the better guys on the market, especially when you're betting on youth. So again, another one I liked, but another one when I saw the dollars, it makes me second guess a little. But again, you happen to mention, which I yelled at you, overpaying to get people in Detroit, or hey, they don't want to come here. I feel like Bobby Quinn not only had a plan, but he was willing to pay the premium to get you to Detroit and get you to Detroit on day one. And, you know, no big gripes about that. What are you thinking about Jesse James, Grifka?
When the signing first came out, I was happy. And I'm just going to go through this really quick. I was happy. And then, like I said, I saw the money as well. And that was one of those things. I'm just like, okay. But like you said, he'll have to make plays. But I love the signing simply because this was one of those guys. I remember on a prior show we were talking about how there's always quarterbacks that find the guys who move the chains, and the guys just don't get covered, and you know, maybe because there's other options on the field. I think that's what he's going to be. This guy can catch the ball. Ben he'd be one of those guys like when it was like, you know, 4th and 3, Roethlisberger would find him for 4 yards, you know, something like that. He'd be open and he would catch the ball. You know, if they're expecting him to put up, you know, Gronkowski numbers, Tony Gonzalez numbers, Antonio Gates numbers, he's not going to do that. I don't think he's that type of tight end, but he is. I think he's one of those solid tight ends I always talk about. That, you know, he's not the biggest road grade blocker, and he's not the guy that's going to go down stretch the field that we all thought we had with Eric Ebron when they drafted him. Even though I knew that draft pick sucked, but he can catch the ball. He's going to be your chain mover. That's the guy I'm always looking for. Just the guy, you know, you need 4 yards at some point. He's going to be able to get you 5. He knows where the sticks are at. You know, he can catch a tough pass. That's another thing. It seemed like when I was watching Steeler games and he make a catch, it was like one of those things where Roethlisberger put in the spot where only the wide receiver could catch it, and he'd catch it. So, yes, I really like that. I really like the signing. I'm not expecting to be the biggest integral, you know, key cog. This is the guy we got to focus on the offense. But with the other pieces that the Lions have out there, I think this guy's going to get open, and defenses may forget about him. And he's a guy that can catch the ball. I mean, he might be like maybe a 2-3 catch guy a game, but as long as they're 2-3 catches, that means something, as opposed to, when it's 3rd and 12 and we dump it out to him for 3 yards out in the flat, that doesn't mean nothing. I'm talking like those catches where it's like 3rd and 5, 4th and 5. Again, we got to keep a drive going, and he's open along the sidelines or sitting, somewhere in a soft part of the zone, and he catches the ball, gets the yards. I'm okay with that. The guy doesn't get a whole lot of targets. We have a whole lot of other options out there on the field, but I really like this signing. I mean, I believe he's a well-rounded tight end. He can block, he can go out and catch, he runs decent routes, and but yeah, maybe the price tag might have been a tiny bit heavy, but like you said, it's one of those things where I think we had to pay him a little more simply because the tight end market this year for free agents was really, really light. So maybe we had to pay a little more to get him, but I'm okay with that right now.
Well, Griffka, a couple things. First of all, I want to say I like your take. The second thing I want to say is one of my favorite parts of this podcast, Griffka, we always give you grief for like every time I finish and you agree with me, I hit you with the bell. But my other favorite part is when like I have a take and you start out your take with my take, which is, he's good. I didn't know if I liked the money. Like, I mean, just say you agree with me so I can hit the bell on things like that. But I think we're on the same page with Jesse James. I mean, we both had similar takes. I think you're right. I mean, we'll be interested to see what happens in the draft, but I don't like going into 2019 as Jesse James as a integral part or, he's our number one and Grifka's boy, Levine Toilolo,
They got to resign Levine, man. I'm pumping this guy, man. I'm emailing Bobby Quinn. I'm calling my insider. I'm like, get this guy back in, man. He finished with 21 catches for like 200 yards. We got to get this guy in.
Well, why do you really want him, Grifka? Do you see something in him?
Levine Toilolo? I think we have something there. We might have found something.
But yeah, man, I think if I've always been a proponent of like getting players, but then pushing them down the depth chart by adding better players. So if Jesse James, our number 2 tight end, and he shows some promise, but also isn't counted on a ton, I'd be happy with that. Now, again, $6 million, you're going to need to make some plays. So I don't want to push him too far down because of what they paid him, his youth, and hopefully there is some upside there. But yeah, another good signing, I thought. Now, Grifka, last show, I hollered at you for a couple reasons. One, because we're doing our mock drafts and you come out and you take Rocky Sin in the first round, and your justification is because you love the guy's name and because you took him mid-round, and I said, I'm getting him in the 3rd round of all my mocks. You're like, I see him in the 1st round in all these mocks. So since then, I went out looking for Rocky Sin. I think I saw one mock that had him at the low end of the 1st round. So that's going to be curious to see on draft day, because if he goes in the 3rd round, I hope he goes to the Lions in the 3rd round. But if he goes in the 3rd round, you're going to hear from me. If he somehow goes in round 1, oh, man, I'm going to have to tip my cap and eat a piece of paper or something. But, I mean, I don't see it happening. Now, I say all that to say this. It's a great name, but is it better than Ode Abushi, our new guard that we just signed? He's been kind of a journeyman, but hey, man, this guy can play. When he's been in there, he's played decent. He's graded decent by Pro Football Focus. I mean, I'm not doing backflips, but I thought this was another nice little signing. His age is good. He seemed big enough to play the position. Every time he's like on a team, next thing you know, he's starting. It doesn't matter if he comes in mid-year, end of the year, whatever it may be. He was in Seattle, I believe, with Darrell Bevel, so there's some familiarity there. Grifka, the Kool-Aid drinkers can't wait for your take on Ode Abushi. Go.
First of all, yes, he's got a great name. He sounds like one of those guys that it's one of the bosses that you have to fight at the end of a level of a video game. Oh my gosh, we're taking on Ode Abushi. We got to watch out for this guy. How do you defeat him? You're looking up in the cheat book on how to beat this guy. But yeah, this is one of those guys like, when I first saw it was him, I'm like, I'm gonna bring it out. I'm not gonna lie, cannon fodder. There you go, camp fodder. And I know you love it when I use that, but he's one of those guys, like you said, you get guys in, and hopefully you sign better guys to push them down, because I personally feel if he's the guy starting in place of TJ Lang, I think the offensive line has a big hole there. Like you said, it's just one of those things where, I believe he's okay, but I hope we get somebody better. That's my take on the guy.
All right, short and sweet. Like you say, it's appropriate though. I mean, a little bit of a depth signing, a little bit of an upside play, but yeah, we don't really want to see him starting at right guard or left. I know he played some left, I believe I heard. So maybe they'll shuffle that line around a little bit, but hey, maybe making $1 million guaranteed, $2 million total. I didn't mind it. Need some depth there. Or need to figure out that TJ Lang hole. No doubt about it. So Grifka, that was the main free agents here. We're sitting waiting. It's Wednesday, and all the reports are saying the Lions have 29, 30 million bucks left because Bobby Quinn did some creative accounting here. So let's go through them. Danny Amendola, these are the cap hits, not the total dollars, but what it's going to be in 2019. Danny Amendola around 4.5 million. Justin Coleman only 3.4 million. Trey Flowers, who on average is going to be making around 18, but in 2019 his cap hit is only going to be around 6 million bucks. Can you believe that? Jesse James just over 2 million bucks. I put O'Day here at maybe $1 mil or less. So the Lions signed all these guys. The fan base is super pumped, and we still got 30 million bucks burning a hole in our pocket. I think Bobby Quinn may be up to something, or he keeps a little bit for a rainy day. But I thought they were dead out of money once they made these first wave of signings. But when the numbers come out, sure enough, man, they can add another couple players at a decent value or a trade or whatever it may be. What are you feeling about this backloading of money, and any clue of what they might look to do with 30 million still sitting there?
First, I'm going to agree with you. I first was seeing these numbers. I'm like, they're spent. They're going to have their money left for the draft picks is pretty much what it is. But then when the deal started to be announced, each cap hit and everything, it's like, wow, gosh, they do have something else going. Who else are they looking at? I'm starting to think of all these other guys they could get, just like CJ Mosley or something, he's signed somewhere else, but still, guys, they still got money to get this guy, And then, I started to think about it, I'm just like, so if all these are backloaded, a few years down the road, this is really going to start to affect our cap. All I could think of was how does this affect our quarterback position? It's just, what are they doing here? It's one of those things, it's just in my mind, not to try to poo-poo these signings, but that's a lot of money, and I'm assuming when you see the official, if they try to release, say Justin Coleman in 3 years or whatever like that, or something, just if it's really backloaded, what's going to be the cap hit at that point? Is it one of those things where, there's that groundswell, here's that thing, this, or maybe next year, this might be the last year for Stafford because we all know what the cap hit is next year, even if, they release him. So it's one of those things where, is the front office kind of protecting themselves for that in case it doesn't go right, doesn't go the way they want it. They want to move a different direction at QB, and that's why everything's backloaded where they get a cheaper guy down the road. Like I said, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but this just kind of crossed my mind. I started thinking about it. Maybe that's why they did it that way. Because we've seen other teams, it seems like Cleveland looks like they're going all in. You brought them up, they're signing and trading for all these guys. And, it's not, the Lions are making these great signings, but we're not paying them anything right now. And it's a deal we always say, at some point, you got to pay the piper. But it might be one of those things where they're doing all this backloading, in a few years. The Lions might be looking for a cheaper quarterback. So I think that might be one of the reasons why.
Yeah, man, I think it's a good point. You made it 3 or 4 times, but I think it's a good point by you. I think that it could be the case of backloading and then, looking for a cheaper quarterback. The other thing I thought, it could be that we as fans usually don't think about is that, Bobby Quinn, he's pretty strategic where he'll look years in advance at both the draft, who might be available in free agency. Like, he kind of maps it out years in advance. I think he really always has, from day one, in my opinion, it seemed to have a game plan of what he's trying to accomplish. So if you really look at it, I think the CBA is up in 2 years where they have to renegotiate. So, that some things are going to change every year. The salary cap in the NFL is going up 10, 15 plus million bucks. I mean, he's probably sort of doing the math and saying, hey, in like 2-3 years, the cap's going to be up this much. That's when we can pay it. And like you said, what a perfect scenario if he pushes money back. Things don't work out with Stafford. You have another young quarterback, but you're paying all these defensive guys more than you probably should. It kind of evens itself out. Or if Stafford plays amazing, you're on the hook for 27 million bucks for the next 3. I think today his contract's up in 2023. So if all goes well, like, you're kind of accounting for that big money being on for the next few years. And then by the time it would be off, like, you'd be getting hit by the Trey Flowers, the Colemans of the world. So I think it could be more than just a quarterback. It could be like a really strategic future planning, saying the cap's going to be higher, CBA might be totally changed, and I'm going to push this back until we know more instead of dealing with it right now. So all really interesting things to think about. Grifka, we got so much to talk about today, man. We got to sort of keep this thing moving. How about just some general thoughts of what you thought these free agents, I know we'll probably talk about it more on the Friday show, but what did these free agents do to, like, our draft strategy? Did you think it opened us up? Did it kind of make things more clear for you, or things more cloudy of what BQ might want to do with his draft picks? What do you think?
Just a quick thought on it. I think it really leaves us open for maybe more of a best player available. They may be targeting a certain position, and like I said, we can talk about this a little more on Friday. But it kind of opens it up where it's like, if say they didn't sign a rush end, and there was a cornerback out there they wanted, and there was a good rush end out there they wanted, they don't have to decide between the two. It's more like, okay, we got Trey Flowers. Now we don't need to go take said rush end we like. We can really focus on this cornerback. And I realize boards, change and stuff. People draft, and you just can't focus on one guy. But I think it does more of it targets more of what they're looking for. They're not left between, him and Han between, 3-4 guys. It might narrow it down some, down to a couple guys that they might be targeting. So I think these signings, it definitely, I think, pinpoints what they're looking for in the draft a little more, because I think we both agree there's still holes that need to be filled. So just saying best player available, I know that's what a lot of GMs will say, we'll just take the best player available. But if it's one of those things, the best player available is only like maybe a half a step above a position that you really, really want, and you really, really like that guy, you might go take the guy you really, really like and leave the token best player available still on the board because it's not a position in need.
Yeah, I kind of disagree a little bit with you. I mean, I think I was really happy with these signings, so I think it does sort of open you up in the draft. But one thing I've learned with the draft, like, doing fantasy football, doing all this draft study I do, you don't really go into a draft saying, oh, I'll take this guy here because I'm set at these other spots. You kind of, the way that you draft the best is when you really stack the board A to Z, and then you pretty much take a guy. Yeah, he still sort of has to be at a position of need, but you can't pass up a guy that you really think's a good player. Just say, well, I'm kind of good at DN now, so I'll pass up on all these really good DNs and take a corner that you could get later in the round that isn't worth that value. So I think it opens them up. I mean, I'm still debating on, like, I don't like Hawkinson there, but what does Jesse James do to that? Does he kill it? Does he make it more plausible? I don't really know, but I think what it does do, hopefully Bobby Quinn sits there, he feels good about his roster, and he says, I'm going to take the most impactful, best player available that's going to be a blue chip type talent. I don't care if that's at rush end, linebacker, corner, wherever, but he's got to get value if he sticks at 8. And if he trades down, that continues to open up options. But, I don't want them reaching on a cornerback at 8 because they think they're set everywhere else. I mean, I think that'd be a mistake. So, let's look here. So we've got big spending on day one. Grifka, don't kill your mojo, your positive mojo. Don't make the people want to come after you. Overall, do you think the Lions overpaid in this free agency that's going to come back to bite them, or overall are you happy and think when we look back years from now we're going to go, man, remember when they went big on free agency? That really changed our team, really got us some victories, hopefully some playoff wins, and hopefully even more than that. What do you think?
Like I said, I think the only one they may have overpaid on, a couple of them, was the Jesse James one, because the numbers they gave him, what the dollar amount they gave him for like what he's done. But like I said, I still like the signing. And the other one, Coleman, that one worries me a little bit. But once again, I don't know if that's making that guy the highest paid nickel of all time. I'm not for sure about that. But I think what they're doing is actually they're signing good players that, and I think the Amendola the price is good. I think the Trey Flowers price is good. So I think they're getting some good signings here, and I don't think it's going to kill the team, but it allows them to maybe go for it a little more. Maybe they do see some other weaknesses in this division, even in the whole conference as a whole. Seeing that if they get the right people, fill the right holes, then they can make a real run somewhere with this year and not have to wait another 2-3 years. So.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, I think in today's NFL, like every time people think it's overspending when really that's the market. And if you don't pay that amount, not only do you not get the players, but overspending today is cheap in like a year. So I think we're going to look back on these as pretty good signings. I think most of them will pan out. And then the biggest thing, Grifka, is like this defense is coming together. I mean, I don't know if you saw like Diggs, Slay, and Coleman are all like cousins, or they all went to the same high school. I mean, there's some real mojo going on the back end there as far as like camaraderie, and I think this team is really coming together as a team that's going to like each other, that's going to have a good locker room, and that defense seems pretty set. And now if they can load up on a few offensive playmakers, and Stafford gets it together and reverts the clock back to like 2 years ago when he was lighting the skies on fire and playing really good sound football, not turning it over, man, I think we could see a real flip in our record from this year and just a really big uptick. And the last question I have for you, Grifka, is like, you're the Lions historian of this crew. Like, can you remember a time when the Lions like came out day one, they had a game plan, they spent the money, they brought in kind of the top defensive guy or the top free agent available like they seem to do this year? Can you remember that in your past? Because I know since I've been a diehard fan, I mean, they've had a few moments here or there, but never when I walked away from day one of free agency going, man, we won the day.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I remember past years where they've signed guys, and I've brought it up before where they've needed offensive linemen. They needed 3 offensive linemen, and they assigned 3 offensive right guards and try to make a left guard, a right guard, and a right tackle out of those guys. I mean, that didn't work out. And plus, all those guys are past their prime anyways. And then I also remember when they needed a defensive lineman to go with Luther Ellis. I know your boy Luther Ellis. You're a huge fan of him. And they signed Hank Thomas away from Minnesota when Minnesota had Hank Thomas and John Randall. And to be honest with you, Minnesota kept one of the two, in John Randall. And Hank Thomas, he was decent, but he wasn't spectacular here. He didn't turn that defense into any great run stuffing defense or anything like that. So, I mean, there's times where they've signed guys, they're like, hey, great signing, and it just hasn't panned out. And I think we all remember the Pat Swilling trade where New Orleans ended up getting Hall of Famer Willie Roaf. So, I just I don't remember anything like this where I came out feeling good. I mean, when I was younger, when all this signing's hands, like, yeah, you see your team signing guys, so you think it's great, but it just never seemed to like pan out. Now it's just like you're older, wiser. You look at it with a different eye, and you look at it more rational than when I was younger. But I don't even remember like even some of the top guys even being on. I remember they carted Derek Thomas in when he was a free agent, Reggie White that first year. I remember seeing Wayne Fonts with him at Pistons games, and it's like you knew these guys weren't coming here. It's like Reggie White's going to sign with the Lions. Yeah, no, he's not. Okay, but I mean, Trey Flowers, man, he was probably one of the best defenders out there, and the Lions snagged him. Yeah, they paid him, but he's here and he knows the system, so he's not learning anything new.
Yeah, man. I mean, the biggest thing for me, again, since breaking down the draft and always being like on contracts and whatnot, is if you look back since Bob Quinn has been here, the guys he's brought in, man, he's always bringing them in at a good age, a pretty good market contract, and he hasn't had a ton of swings and misses. He's had some miscues here or there, but I mean, I love that he doesn't bring in like 32-year-old running backs or kind of reach on defenders that have really never produced. I mean, he seems to like see guys that produce, see them at like kind of a good age, and then he's able to market value them and get them here. And I mean, that's what he ended up doing with Marvin Jones. I know we didn't really love that deal, but it was like Marvin Jones was coming into 25 years old or whatever. They paid him like $8-9 million bucks. He's come here and produced, and now that contract looks good compared to all these other receivers. So I think that this is the first time I've seen him be this aggressive in free agency, have a real plan that you can wrap your head around, and guys that, hey, man, if Trey Flowers is good, if Coleman is good, these guys are here for the next 2, 3, 4 years at a really high level with a quarterback that's already paid and some skill guys. So I think this team is going to be ready to rock and roll. And I mean, everything I've saw on Twitter and across the board, like Lions fans are fired up. It's been fun. We can't wait to see kind of what they do to finish it out. The draft's going to be huge, but Grifka, man, it was a huge free agent show. I mean, got to talk about some really fun additions. It's what we've been waiting for. I mean, how about we come back on Friday and we'll talk about maybe how this impacts the draft a little bit more. Probably by then we'll have a few more signings we can talk about. How's that sound to you? You got anything else? Well, how's that sound to you first? Let's go there.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Let's do that.
All right, and then the people always want to know, do you have anything else, Grifka, before we get up out of here?
Nope.
All right, everybody. So thank you so much for listening to Detroit Koolaid Cast. That we try to get a lot in today and just kind of talk some football. It's a great time of year. We know everybody's fired up out there. So please keep listening to the podcast. Subscribe, tell a friend, hit me up on Twitter. Detroit_Koolaid is where you can get at me, ask us any type of questions, interact. We're always talking Lions on there, having a bunch of fun. So hit that up, and we'll be back here Friday morning for another episode of the Detroit Koolaid Cast. Take care, everybody. We're out.
Pack the bag, start the plane. This game is over. It is over. What a comeback by the Lions.
Drink it in, man.